Well, sticks and stones, they might break my bones, and the enemy, it won't leave me alone. I'ma live my life happy and free. Sticks and stones, they may break my bones, but they'll never break me. Come on, devil, get inside my head. You won't change me 'cause I'm way too blessed. Send your warriors to do their best. You can't kill me 'cause I'm already dead. I said you can't kill me 'cause I'm already dead. Well, welcome back to Total Freedom Radio, the show that's all about healing, raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. If you're on YouTube, Rumble, or Brighteon, hit that like and subscribe button and share this program with others. Did you like that new opening? Later, I'll have it made with music, but for now, that's okay. Remember in the introduction show when I spoke about the song I wrote for my character when he should have been just psychologically and emotionally destroyed? That's part of it. It's a ridiculously long song in the book because all the rest of the men are in the same shape he is, and as he so often does, he sets the pattern of praise while in the midst of tragedy, and they all begin to sing along, trying to deal with it with him. As each man adds his own verse about where he is in it all, it gets a little long, but in the while you're reading it, you don't mind because you know exactly where they're at. So I think you'll like it. I'll share more of their songs and little sound bites as we go along. So don't forget to go to www.renalyn.com and click into the book titles and start reading the Prepare for the End book series so you'll know what the songs are all about, who the characters are, and why they matter to them. Those links will take you straight to Amazon where you can get paperback or ebooks. Don't forget to leave a review there, hopefully a wonderful one. If you got a beef, just send me an email and we'll talk about it. Book one introduces the characters in the beginning of where they take up their lives. It's the initial look at where they are in the Kingdom War. Book two builds the intrigue, and book three sets our professor up in a way that leads to national attention as his entire world falls apart. Book 4, 5, and 6 begin to build on that, and 6 is almost out, by the way. It puts you right in the middle of what they experience as the Serpent King demon attempts to destroy them all and stop God's word from going forth. They're fighting against extreme narcissistic occultic practitioners who come at them from all sides. Remember, last time we left off with the understanding that if it goes against God's laws and moralities, it's wrong. It's called rebellion. I left you with the question, is narcissism witchcraft? So let's see what God actually says about that this week. Turn in your Bible to 1 Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected thee from being king. Now, this is God's words to Saul, but it applies to all of us. So, if we stubbornly follow Lucifer in his rebellion, like some of the angels did, we're actually operating in witchcraft. So, add that into your kingdom of darkness bucket. It just outright plain says that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. So, again, what I want you to do is start seeing the kingdom traits in any person, any movement, any church teaching, anything. And I want you to learn to look at the contrast between the two so it's more easily identifiable. And it's the culture of the two kingdoms. So let's look at that. Rebellion is the contrast of obedience. Witchcraft, iniquity, and idolatry are all the opposite of obedience. I will is the contrast of Lord lead me. Do what thy wilt, like Aleister Crowley informs us to do, is the contrast of thou shalt not. You see, when you operate under the laws and ways of God, things are one way. And when you operate under the laws of the rebellious kingdom, they're another. God's kingdom traits take care of other people, including our children. I think of this child trafficking thing we're all hearing about now. So instead of abusing or murdering them, God's people takes care of them. God's kingdom is one of grace and mercy, not using others for our own pleasure and destroying them, killing them, or their freedom. What I want you to see tonight is that Lucifer actually had true total freedom. It was given to him from the beginning. He had access to everything good and worthy, like we talked about last week. He had the ultimate position under the Godhead, and he gave it all up. Why? To do it his own way, because there was one thing that was unattainable, and that was being God himself. God in his kingdom waves gives true freedom in its totality, while the other kingdom says, I'll do it my way. But, folks, that gets you thrown out of the places God already has for you and they may already have you in, with true power and position in Him, to eventually be cast into outer darkness away from Him while He gives you what you desired and you chose. Have you ever heard a pastor use the term worldly? I heard that all the time growing up in the denomination I was in, and it was everything. If you wore makeup, you were worldly. If you wore pants instead of a skirt, you were worldly. If you did this, if you did that, you were worldly. And I lived in this constant oppression all the time of wondering if I was worldly and imagining God as this person in the sky ready to stomp me into oblivion because I didn't know what worldly really meant. And so it was a while before I did, but when I began to study, is what I finally determined was being worldly simply means operating in that system of rebellion against God and his known laws and ways of living. Adopting that culture, that new set of rules where do what thou wilt reigns instead of what God's rules say. Doing it your own way, like Lucifer. Following the crowds into hedonism, that endless quest for pleasure, and determined to live out your own desires and ways despite the biblical mandates and the warnings of the consequences if you do. Narcissists do this all the time. They don't care what God says. Rules mean nothing to them. Morals, consequences, or who is hurt around them are nothing to them, as they determine to have what they want and rule over you and everyone else. Please understand there's a difference in taking your rightful role and position, even asserting your rightful authority with grace, and an ultimate desire to rule simply for the sake of ruling or being superior or being the top dog. Sometimes Christians even refuse to take their power, authority, or role due to not wanting to exhibit those traits. They call it humility and being humble. And I totally understand that, but sometimes it's just as wrong because we're often manipulated by someone with a narcissistic personality to stay under their power and their rule, and being told that we're trying to help God along or trying to do what we're supposed to sit back and let Him do, what I call His part. In reality, some people do try to do that. I get that. That narcissistic Jezebel spirit is alive and well in America and in our churches, and it loves to rule and take over everyone else's role and position, but not their responsibility generally. That's what we're talking about. But God has shown me along the way that there's His part, which we're supposed to wait on and stay out of and let Him do. But there's also our part, and He's not going to do it for us, folks. That's what I'm talking about here, where people hide behind the fact that others overstepped and they use that for an excuse to opt out. And they expect God to just be that wonderful genie in the sky, that Santa Claus who just drops things in our lap because we say, oh, God, please give it to us. We call that prayer, but we also know what it is. Stop that. We have to step up. Sometimes it's a delicate balance, and I'll admit that. It's a little tricky. But as long as we're following His leading and we're not just determined to do it our own way or be in charge for the sake of being in charge, He expects us to take up our mantle, step out in faith, and fulfill our tasks. Let's look at some examples of that in the Word. God told Abraham that he was going to make a great nation of him, but Abraham had to make the journey to the promised land or it couldn't happen. He told the Israelites he'd protect and guide them as they went into the promised land, but they had to fight the giants and take the land. Folks, do you know out of all the Israelites that left Egypt, only two of the original ones went into the promised land because the rest didn't trust God and they were afraid? Solomon was instructed to build the temple. Then he turned around and let his wicked wives lead him into building temples to other gods after that. Fallen ones, if you will, who followed Lucifer in rebellion against God. So while he did what was right, he offset it by doing what was wrong. We have to do what God calls us to do while not getting manipulated to add other things and other ways in that also serves the enemy. Don't forget, true narcissists may harm others to gain attention, feed their sense of superiority, or to get what they want. For this reason, a person may have traits of antisocial personality disorder too, which includes a disregard and or hostility toward the rights of others, aggression or violence, a lack of remorse for harming others, a tendency to lie, breaking the law, chronic irresponsibility, and impulsive and reckless behavior along with a bunch of other stuff. When we call them on these things, narcissists often want to push your compassion and responsibility buttons to either make you feel sorry for them or to presume upon a false equivalency to lead you to overlook their terrible behavior and do what they want that serves them and the enemy rather than do what you know is right. They excuse the most horrendous behavior this way by making it sound like your faults are just as bad as theirs. I know a lady who was trying to speak to her husband about him hiring prostitutes and what it was doing to their marriage. And his defense was to scream at her, "Yeah, but you leave dishes in the sink." So add the false equivalency trait to the bucket that it belongs in, along with the list that I just gave you, because they'll always attempt to guilt trip you, saying you're the selfish and judgmental one. And out of not being able to willing to stand on God's word alone and stand in our own footsteps, knowing right from wrong, we do those things. Stop it, people. All right, let's take just a moment here to recognize my sponsors. We have again Simply Clean Foods. Their primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze dried food in our daily cooking. As a community focused company, they strive to help our veterans through food donations and they provide food to victims of natural disasters as well. They're dedicated to providing the best quality food that you can buy next to buying fresh from a farmer's market. Their stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMO policies and testing for heavy metals make them unique in the storable foods market. They say just because our food is freeze dried doesn't make it just for emergencies. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away food that you don't use. Just take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Go to www.renalyn.com, find the affiliates page, and click into Simply Clean Foods from there. And I'll get a small percentage of the of the food to help offset publishing cost so I can keep the series going. Other ways you can help do that is go to www.rena-that insurance chick. That's my website. Contact me there or shoot me an email with your name and phone number to askrenalyn@yahoo.com and I'll make an appointment with you for a free quote. Imagine that you got that call today where you've lost a loved one. You got enough to deal with, people, without worrying about where the money for final expenses is coming from. Funerals are expensive and can be anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000 to up for when you get really crazy with it. Final expenses can include burial or cremation cost, gathering to celebrate your life, funeral expenses, medical expenses, long or short care term, long or short-term care cost, nursing home expenses, legal matters. It can bring those final hospital bills and lawsuits from accidents. Maybe you need to leave funds for college for your kids, or your spouse who's never worked needs funds to go back to school so they can raise your ability to replace your income. It's not as hard to obtain as you think it is, and I'm a broker with over 40 companies, so there's not very many people I've not been able to find insurance for. Hit that donate button while you're at www.renalyn.com to help offset publishing cost. Prepare for the End is a great series, and I need help to get it on the market. Any amount is appreciated. And if you want to help sponsor the podcast and have an ad on here, shoot me an email at askrenalyn.com. All right, back to our subject. Now, quoted you an Old Testament verse about rebellion being as the sin of witchcraft. So is that just an Old Testament rule that doesn't matter anymore? No. The New Testament continues this theme of rebellion being witchcraft. Galatians 3:1 says, "O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that ye should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ has been evidently set forth, crucified among you?" Now, the term bewitched here refers to the act of being influenced or controlled by witchcraft or magic. Now, remember, witchcraft is rebellion. This is often leading to deception or a departure from the truth. So somebody else's rebellion can lead you to your own rebellion. So witchcraft is not always what you think. It's not always a set of dark rituals that call upon a spirit where you light candles and you drink awful substances and you mutter strange phrases. Strong's Concordance says it's akin to the word malign or to fascinate by false representations, lying, to assert something as a fact that you know is not true, but also to speak ill of one, to slander, traduce him. Now, that word traduced means to speak badly of or tell lies about someone so as to damage their reputation. Again, a narcissistic trait. To bring evil on one by feigning praise or an evil eye. In the South, we call this blowing smoke, and I'll let you fill in the rest of that yourself. Narcissists love to feign praise during the love bombing stage, and it's to charm and bewitch you so you'll listen to their voice and follow their leading, while at the same time that they're leading other people to doubt you. In the biblical context, it's associated with spiritual deception and the turning away from the gospel of Christ to another gospel. This concept is most notably addressed in the New Testament, particularly in the writings of the Apostle Paul. Acts 8:9 says, "But there was a certain man named Simon, called Simon, which before time in the same city used sorcery and bewitched the people of Samaria, giving out that himself was some great one." Doesn't that sound like a narcissist and Lucifer? In verse 11, he says, "And to him they had regard, because that of a long time he had bewitched them with sorceries." So this has been going on for a while. They started following Gnosticism, which is a mixture of Christianity and paganism rather than Jesus. Now, I teach Ken Johnson's book about ancient paganism, and I go into this Gnosticism pretty deep at the end about all the places in the New Testament where it talks about the false religions and the heretics and don't do what they do, but never really breaks down what they do. So I might do that eventually. All right. Who bewitched them? Simon did. But ultimately, Lucifer and the fallen ones were the true bewitchers because they had first bewitched Simon with a lust for power and to be the ruling god of their place. Remember when Jesus told some people that they were like their father, the devil? It's all in who you follow, whose traits you adopt, and which kingdom culture you want to live in. Folks, they're two different cultures and you can't live in both. So to be sure you know which bucket the things you love belong to, learn these traits very well. So let's recap again. Lucifer went from being trusted to go everywhere in the kingdom and guarding the throne of God to the sin of rebellion, which God's word calls witchcraft. And those who stubbornly follow that same path, God calls idolaters, says they've been bewitched and they are doing iniquity, which is sin. Now, Satan leads others or entices others to do the same, or Lucifer. All right. The concept of being bewitched can also be understood within the broader context of spiritual warfare, because those of us that fight against these traits are all really in a warfare, a kingdom warfare against the other kingdom's traits. Ephesians 6:12 reminds believers, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." This passage emphasizes the reality of spiritual forces that seek to deceive and lead believers away from the truth of the gospel. This is the spirit of rebellion. It's the spirit of narcissism, and it's the spirit of Lucifer. So how do they do it? Remember what it said? Lies, feigning praise, charming people to believe them while using false accusations, slander, and doubt against them. It's straight up manipulation. You see, witchcraft is simply a means to manipulate others to do what you want them to have your own way. The spells, rituals, and narcissistic behavior are hell's kingdom traits to rule those you consider to be inferior to yourself. Wouldn't you have to think that other people were inferior to yourself to have this ability to manipulate and control them to do what you want? To be the one who gets what you want and the power to maneuver everyone and everything around you to serve your wants and desires? It's a power trip, people. Like no other control in everywhere anyone for it's a power trip like no other to control everyone for your own purposes. Now I'm going to tell you right now, control is witchcraft. Practice that phrase. Control is witchcraft. If you're controlling others, you're operating in witchcraft. If you're allowing others to control you, you're falling under the rebellion of witchcraft. All right? Manipulation is witchcraft, and so is the power to control. So let's define manipulation. It's a control or influence over a person or situation cleverly, unfairly, or unscrupulously. So it's not even a fair fight, people. It's an underhanded way of making other people do what you want them to. In a narcissistic relationship, manipulation is when they focus on how you reacted instead of how they treated you. The number one rule of manipulation is actions speak louder than words. Actions prove who someone is. Words just prove who they want to be or what they want you to believe they are. If you want to know your true value in someone's life, mute their words and watch their behavior. I'm telling you, I would rather walk away than be manipulated by an apology that doesn't come with changed behavior. I don't want to live that way anymore. It's perfectly fine to walk away from a manipulative person, pastor, teacher, church, or group. When people decide to be audacious with their disrespect, you have a right to be courageous with your boundaries and also a responsibility. You don't owe kindness to anyone who treats you with contempt. It's up to you to teach people that that there are consequences for their actions towards you. We don't do this because often we're manipulated by false accusations that standing up for ourselves and refusing to be manipulated further means that we're the selfish or demanding person. Stop falling for that. Setting boundaries became easier for me when I stopped focusing on how others would feel about me if I set the boundary, and I began to focus more on how I would feel about me if I didn't. Manipulation is a very serious issue in both personal relationships and our broader society. The Bible provides clear guidance on how we should conduct ourselves in truth and honesty. Let us strive to live lives that reflect God's love, integrity, and truth, ensuring that we honor Him in all our actions and relationships. Now, I found tons of verses in the Bible about manipulation. So let's look at some of them. First, Proverbs 12:20 says, "Deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but those who plan peace have joy." Now, this highlights the contrast that we're talking about between deceitful manipulation and peaceful intentions. Those who manipulate are driven by evil desires and evil spirits, while those who seek peace and honesty find joy and generally are led by the Spirit of God. Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can determine it?" So people who are doing this are desperately sick. This verse reminds us that our own hearts can be deceptive, making it easy for us to fall into manipulation or to be manipulated. We got to be aware of our inner motivations and the need for God's guidance in our decision making. If you're not sure, take it to the Word. Proverbs 26:24 through 25 says, "Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart." This passage warns us to be wary of individuals who use flattering words or manipulation to disguise their true intentions. People who harbor deceitful motives may appear kind, but their hearts are filled with evil. Remember, listen to their words, but watch their actions. Matthew 7:15. "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ravenous wolves." This shows this words and deeds against people. Manipulation often hides behind a mask of righteousness. This verse reminds us to be cautious of individuals who appear harmless, but whose actions and intentions are harmful. Ephesians 4:14. "So that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves, and carried away by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, and by craftiness in deceitful schemes." Paul warns about the dangers of being manipulated by deceitful people and ideas. Maturity in faith allows believers to discern truth from falsehood and avoid being easily manipulated. Proverbs 6:16 through 19. "There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and anyone who sows discord among brothers." Folks, this is completely narcissistic behavior. God despised the tactics of manipulation, including lying, deception, and causing discord among people. This passage encourages us to avoid such actions and to strive for honesty and peace in our own life, both in our behavior and the behavior of those we allow close to us. Proverbs 21:6 says, "The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death." So manipulating others for personal gain will ultimately lead to destruction. The Bible stresses that dishonest wealth or success achieved through deception will not last and it will bring ruin. Psalms 10:7 says, "His mouth is filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue are mischief and iniquity." He's doing this for an evil purpose. It describes the wickedness of a manipulative person whose words are filled with lies, oppression, and harm. It highlights the destructive power of deceitful speech, and it's what narcissists do all the time. Titus 1:10 through 11 says, "For there are many who are insubordinate, empty talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision party, they must be silenced since they are upsetting whole families by teaching for shameful gain what they ought not to teach. Paul warns against those who manipulate others for personal gain, particularly in the context of false teaching. Manipulation can extend to the realm of religion where individuals use influence to deceive and control others. That's getting more common today, too. Galatians 6:7 says, "Do not be deceived, for God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap." Like Lucifer, your actions and your choices will eventually flip flop on you, and you're going to lose even what you have. This verse reminds us that deception, manipulation, and dishonesty ultimately result in negative behaviors and consequences. So, what we sow in life, whether good or bad, may eventually come back to us. 2 Corinthians 11:13 through 15 says, "For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. They're not apostles, they disguise themselves as apostles. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds." This passage warns about false apostles who use manipulation to deceive people, disguising their evil intentions as righteous acts. We must be vigilant and discerning. And Jesus answered them in Matthew 24:4 through 5, said, "See that no man leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will lead them astray." So we have a responsibility here that we're not to let people manipulate us by claiming false authority. It's essential that we stay grounded in the truth to avoid being deceived. So, to answer our question, I think we've more than proven that narcissism is witchcraft, manipulation is witchcraft, and we should stay away from the people that do it, and we should make sure that we don't do it ourselves. Now, let's close out with our song one more time and let you listen to it because as narcissists always cast doubt on us and false accusations, we want to remember to not fall to it. Well, sticks and stones, they might break my bones, and the enemy, it won't leave me alone. I'ma live my life happy and free. Sticks and stones, they may break my bones, but they'll never break me. Come on, devil, get inside my head. You won't change me 'cause I'm way too blessed. Send your warriors to do their best. You can't kill me 'cause I'm already dead. I said you can't kill me 'cause I'm already dead.